Ladies and gentlemen, right now, in this very moment, I want you to ask yourself one question. What would I do if I had zero fear? Not less fear. Not controlled fear. I mean no fear at all. Let it sink in. What would you build? Who would you become? Where would you go? Fear has been living rent-free in your mind. It's that silent whisper in the dark, that tightening in your chest, that invisible wall standing between you and your greatness. And for what? Fear has never paid a single bill. It's never solved a single problem. But it has stolen dreams. It has silenced voices. It has paralyzed potential. Well, today, we're evicting fear. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Today. Right here. In the next 60 minutes. So let's break this down. Fear is a shapeshifter. It sneaks into our lives dressed in logic, caution, and hesitation. It often disguises itself so well that we don't even recognize it for what it is. We say we're waiting for the right time. We say we need more information. We say we're being realistic. But beneath all of those rational explanations is often one truth. We're afraid. And fear, when it remains nameless and unspoken, becomes a silent ruler of our decisions. The first step to removing fear is to name it. This sounds simple, but it requires deep honesty. It requires you to pause, look inward, and confront the exact feeling that's been holding you back. It's not enough to say, I feel nervous, or I'm just uncomfortable. You have to be precise. Are you afraid of failing and being judged? Are you afraid of succeeding and not being able to sustain it? Are you afraid of disappointing others, being seen, or being abandoned? When you put words to it, you rob fear of its power. Many people live in a fog of vague anxiety, never quite sure why they feel stuck. But once you put a name to your fear, you move it from the unconscious to the conscious. You bring it into a space where you can examine it, question it, and eventually dismantle it. This is why writing it down is such a powerful move. When your fear lives only in your head, it has no structure. It loops endlessly, morphs, and feeds off uncertainty. But when you take a pen and write down exactly what you're afraid of, you freeze it in place. You can stare at it. You can speak to it. You can shrink it. Fear hates clarity. It operates best when it's murky and undefined. Once you say, I am afraid of starting this business because I might go broke, you've taken a huge step. You haven't conquered the fear yet, but you've given it a boundary. You've put it in a corner of the room where you can study it. From there, you can begin to ask questions. Is this fear rational? Where did it come from? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? Most of the time, the fear we carry has no real weight. It's a shadow from a past experience, an old story told by someone else, or a protective instinct that's been exaggerated. When we don't name it, we give it too much authority. It becomes a voice that whispers, you can't, every time you try to step forward. But once it has a name, it becomes something we can respond to, something we can plan for, and most importantly, something we can overcome. Once fear is named, the next essential step is to trace its roots. Fear doesn't show up randomly. It's a learned response, often planted deep within us during childhood, through a painful experience, or from someone else's limiting beliefs passed down as truth. To remove fear entirely, you have to understand where it came from and how it took hold. You have to dig into your story and connect the dots between then and now. Most fears are not born from real danger. They're born from moments that made us feel exposed, rejected, or unworthy. Maybe you raised your hand in class and got the answer wrong and the laughter stuck with you. Maybe you took a risk once and it didn't go the way you planned. So now your mind associates trying with failing. Or maybe someone important to you, like a parent, teacher, or friend, told you not to dream too big, not to make a scene, not to aim too high, because they didn't want you to get hurt. Their fear became your foundation. The mind is a powerful recorder. It remembers the emotions that came with those early moments, especially shame and embarrassment. Over time, it learns to protect you from anything that even slightly resembles the pain you once felt. That's why you might avoid public speaking, applying for that job, or sharing your work. It's not because you can't do it, it's because your subconscious mind believes it's keeping you safe. The fear was installed like software, and until you trace it back to the original coding, it will continue to run quietly in the background. Tracing the root of your fear isn't about blame, it's about awareness. You're not looking to point fingers. You're looking to uncover the origin so you can see that what you're carrying isn't always yours. Sometimes we inherit fear the same way we inherit eye color or habits. If you grew up around people who worried constantly about money, you may carry that anxiety even if your financial situation is stable. If you were taught to stay quiet and not rock the boat, you may fear speaking oop heaven when your voice is needed most. The moment you identify the origin, you begin to loosen fear's grip. You realize that what happened years ago doesn't have to define how you live now. You can rewrite the script, but first you have to see the old one clearly. Fear likes to disguise itself as truth, but when you trace it, you start to see the illusion. You recognize the moment it began, the story it created, and the way it's influenced your behavior ever since. And from that place of understanding, you gain the power to break the cycle. You realize you've been operating on outdated programming, and it's time to install a new system based on truth, courage, and possibility. Fear is persuasive because it speaks and questions negative ones that echo through your mind until they feel like truth. What if I fail? What if they laugh? What if I'm not good enough? These questions don't offer solutions. They feed anxiety. They trap you in mental loops that prevent action and cloud your vision. The third key to removing fear is learning how to flip these questions. You can't stop fear from speaking, but you can change the conversation. Fear-based thinking always starts with assumption. It assumes the worst-case scenario and treats it like the most likely outcome. The mind, in trying to protect you, paints vivid pictures of everything going wrong, but rarely does it balance that vision with the opposite question. Rarely do we ask, what if this works? What if I succeed beyond what I imagined? What if everything goes right? That's where the power lies, not in removing the questions, but in replacing them. Flipping the script isn't about toxic positivity. It's not pretending fear doesn't exist. It's about shifting your mental framework from defense to offense. Instead of looking for everything that could hurt you, you begin to look for what could help you, what could grow you, what could elevate you. This change doesn't happen automatically. You have to train it like a muscle. Every time fear asks a question, you meet it with its opposite. What if I'm not ready becomes, what if this is exactly the step I need to grow? What if I embarrass myself becomes, what if I inspire someone by showing up fully, flaws and all? When you flip the question, you shift from being a victim of fear to the author of your thoughts. You take back creative control over your life. Fear has been directing your attention to everything that could go wrong, and when your mind is focused on threat, it can't focus on opportunity. But when you redirect that focus, when you start asking powerful, empowering questions, you literally change the chemistry of your brain. Your body begins to respond differently. Instead of freezing, you prepare. Instead of doubting, you engage. You stop retreating and start creating. This mental shift also changes how you see failure. Instead of fearing it, you start to see it as part of the process. What if I fail becomes, what if this is the step that leads to my biggest breakthrough? Every successful person has failed often more times than they've succeeded, but they didn't let fear of failure define them. They asked better questions. They flipped the script. Fear's voice will always be there. It's part of being human. But its power lies not in its presence, it lies in your response. You get to decide which questions you allow to guide your thought. You get to decide if your mind becomes a cage or a launch pad. Flipping the script gives you access to possibility, creativity, and courage that fear has tried to hide from you. Fear loses its grip the moment you move. It thrives in stillness, in overthinking, in waiting for the perfect moment that never arrives. When you sit with fear too long, it grows, it multiplies. It creates stories, assumptions, and imagined outcomes that paralyze you. The longer you wait to act, the more powerful the fear becomes. That's why the fourth step in removing fear is to move through it immediately, physically, and decisively. Action disrupts the fear cycle. It interrupts the mind's tendency to spiral into what-ifs. The moment you do something, no matter how small, you shift from being passive to being in control. Fear cannot live in the same space as forward momentum. The second you act, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You send a message to your brain and your body, I'm not running from this. I'm handling it. This doesn't mean you need to take a massive leap. In fact, the most powerful actions are often the smallest ones. If you fear speaking up, raise your hand and say one sentence. If you fear launching your idea, write the first line, send the first email, record the first video. These micro movements build confidence. They create evidence. And confidence isn't something you wait for, it's something you build through repeated action. Physical movement plays a key role in this process. Fear often shows up in the body before the mind even registers it. You might feel tightness in your chest, tension in your jaw, or heaviness in your stomach. When you move, stand up, walk, stretch, breathe deeply, you signal to your nervous system that you are not trapped. You remind yourself that you are not frozen. This physical shift impacts your emotional state. It gives you the energy and clarity to take that next step. There's also something powerful about doing the exact thing fear told you not to do. If fear says stay quiet, speak. If fear says wait, act. If fear says play it safe, take a calculated risk. This intentional rebellion breaks the cycle. It rewires your brain to see fear as a trigger for movement, not avoidance. Over time, fear becomes less of a stop sign and more of a green light, an indicator that you're stepping into growth. The truth is, fear rarely disappears before action. Most people wait to feel confident, wait to feel ready, wait for the fear to go away. But waiting keeps you stuck. Action comes first, and the feelings follow. Every step you take through fear weakens it. It becomes quieter, less convincing, easier to challenge, and as you continue to move, you build momentum. What once felt terrifying begins to feel familiar. The task that paralyzed you becomes part of your routine. You start to trust yourself, not because fear vanished, but because you proved that you could keep moving in spite of it. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act anyway. When you choose movement, you choose progress. You choose truth, you choose freedom. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a belief system. At its core, fear is rooted in a set of assumptions you've accepted as true. I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'll be judged. I always mess up. Things never work out for me. These beliefs operate in the background of your mind, shaping every decision, every hesitation, every missed opportunity. You can take all the action in the world, but if your internal beliefs stay the same, fear will eventually creep back in. That's why removing fear requires something deeper, a complete upgrade of your belief system. Every belief you hold right now was learned. You were not born thinking you're not enough. You were not born doubting your voice or your potential. Somewhere along the way, you picked up these beliefs through experiences, failures, other people's opinions, and moments of vulnerability. Over time, they became part of your identity. You stopped questioning them and started operating as if they were facts. But they're not facts. They're patterns, and patterns can be broken. Upgrading your beliefs means replacing fear-driven narratives with ones rooted in power, truth, and possibility. This doesn't happen by accident. It takes deliberate effort. You must become aware of the thoughts that are keeping you small and begin challenging them. When a voice in your head says, "I'll never be successful," You don't let it slide. You stop and ask, says who? You look for evidence. You question the story. You recognize that it's not you talking. It's fear pretending to be your inner voice. Then you begin installing new beliefs. This is where the shift happens. You start to repeat affirmations not because they're magic words, but because repetition reprograms the brain. When you say, I am capable, I take action despite fear, I am worthy of success, I learn and grow every day, you begin creating a new internal language. That language shapes your behavior, your energy, and your perception of what's possible. These new beliefs must be reinforced with action. You don't just tell yourself you're confident, you prove it by showing up. You don't just say you're a leader, you lead. Every time your actions align with your new beliefs, you strengthen the foundation beneath them. Slowly, the old fearful programming fades. It loses its grip because it no longer matches who you are becoming. It's also important to surround yourself with environments that reinforce your new mindset. People, spaces, and media that reflect the version of you you're stepping into. Beliefs are not formed in isolation. They are shaped by what you consume, who you talk to, what you allow into your mental space. If you're serious about removing fear, you must be just as serious about protecting and nurturing your belief system. Fear doesn't disappear by force. It fades when it no longer fits. When your identity shifts, when your beliefs expand, fear can no longer find a home. What once seemed impossible begins to feel natural. What once triggered doubt now triggers drive, and your belief in yourself becomes the loudest voice in the room. The final and perhaps most crucial step in completely removing fear is deciding who you are. Fear has a way of sneaking into your identity. It whispers that you are the sum of your past mistakes, your failures, your fears, and your limiting beliefs. It convinces you that you are small, weak, or unworthy. But none of this is who you truly are. The person you are, the one capable of achieving greatness, is not defined by fear. It is defined by the choices you make, the actions you take, and the identity you choose to step into every single day. Most people are reactive to their fears. They let fear define them and dictate their choices. They wait for the right moment, the right circumstances, or the right feeling of confidence before they step into the life they truly want. But this is a trap. You don't wait for fear to disappear. You don't wait for the perfect moment or for the stars to align. You make the decision right now, today, to be the person you've always dreamed of becoming. You decide to be bold, courageous, and unshakable no, because you feel ready, but because you've chosen to be that person. When you decide who you are, you take back control of your life. You no longer allow fear to dictate your actions or your sense of self-worth. Instead, you create an identity that aligns with your vision, one that is stronger, more capable, and more resilient than any fear could ever be. You don't allow fear to tell you who you are. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your limitations. You are who you decide to be. This decision requires an unwavering commitment. It's not something you do once and forget. It's a daily practice. Every time fear shows up, and it will, you remind yourself of the person you've chosen to be. You affirm it to yourself. I am brave. I am capable. I am resilient. You embody the identity of someone who has already overcome fear, even if the fear still feels present. You walk in the confidence of someone who is already living the life they desire, knowing that you don't need to wait for permission or for fear to go away. The decision to be someone who moves past fear is powerful because it is rooted in action. The identity you create is reflected in the choices you make every day. If you see yourself as someone who takes risks, someone who speaks up, someone who pursues their goals relentlessly, then that's exactly what you'll do. Fear no longer holds power over you because it is no longer a part of your identity. It becomes a mere obstacle that you know how to overcome, not something that controls you. As you continue to step into the identity you've chosen, you will notice that fear becomes less and less relevant. It will always be there, but it won't define your action. You will be defined by your courage, your resilience, and your unwavering commitment to the vision of who you want to be. And with every decision, every action, every step you take, you affirm to yourself that you are more than capable of living the life you desire, and fear has no place in that story.